You see an opportunity, you feel that quick electric impulse that says go, but then within seconds, your mind floods with 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't. You imagine the embarrassment if it fails, the judgment if it's misunderstood, the consequences if it goes wrong, and so you stop. The moment passes. You tell yourself you'll act next time, but the truth is you won't, because you're living in the future tense. You've built a life in your head where every decision must be safe, every action must be pre-approved by anxiety, and every moment must be controlled. This is the death of spontaneity, the silent killing of the most authentic part of your existence. Welcome to The Fictionist. If this kind of exploration speaks to you, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. The anxious mind doesn't live in the present. It doesn't even live in reality. It lives in a simulated version of the world, a mental future that it keeps predicting and revising. Every possible outcome is played out, every risk is exaggerated, and every decision becomes a battlefield of what-ifs. This hyper-vigilant mental state evolved as a survival mechanism. The primitive brain was built to anticipate danger, but in modern life that same circuitry reacts not to tigers or cliffs, but to texts, emails, or first dates. The brain's predictive machinery, once a tool for physical survival, now fuels psychological paralysis. Overthinking is the mind's attempt to control uncertainty. The anxious person cannot tolerate the unknown, so they overanalyze it. Imagine a person standing before a pool. They want to dive, but instead they calculate the water temperature, depth, distance, and angle of entry. They calculate so long that the water's surface changes, the light shifts, and the original impulse to dive, pure, natural, alive, dies out. That is what overthinking does to life. It takes spontaneous action, the essence of vitality, and replaces it with analysis, caution, and delay. But beneath this intellectual activity lies fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of failure, fear of regret. These fears don't operate consciously. They whisper beneath thoughts, shaping every hesitation. The mind convinces itself that thinking more means acting wisely. But wisdom is not the same as hesitation. What's really happening is self-protection, an attempt to avoid emotional pain through endless prediction. The tragedy is that by avoiding pain, we also avoid joy. The person who refuses to act until every outcome is certain also refuses to live until life guarantees them safety. That guarantee never comes. In a world obsessed with optimization and control, this paralysis is reinforced. Technology feeds the illusion that every decision can be improved with one more review, one more video, one more tutorial. Even simple choices, what to eat, what to wear, who to talk to, are outsourced to endless scrolling. This turns the natural flow of decision-making into a form of digital self-doubt. We no longer act from impulse, we act from research. We have replaced intuition with information, and in doing so, we've traded presence for prediction. This psychological condition isn't laziness, it's exhaustion. Overthinkers aren't indecisive because they lack energy. They are indecisive because all their energy is spent thinking. Every imagined scenario consumes emotional fuel. The mind runs through dozens of simulations before a single word is spoken or a step is taken. The result is cognitive depletion. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and decision-making, becomes overloaded. Once that happens, action feels impossible. You're not unwilling, you're neurologically drained. Consider a simple moment. A person at a social gathering who wants to speak up. They feel the urge to share a thought, but their brain immediately generates a rapid list of possible reactions. What if they think I am weird? What if I say something wrong? What if I'm ignored? Within seconds, the window closes. The conversation moves on. The opportunity to connect dies, not because the person had nothing to say, but because their fear of judgment created an internal veto. That tiny moment repeated 100 times a day becomes the architecture of a silent life. The irony is that overthinkers often pride themselves on their thoughtfulness. They see their caution as intelligence, their restraint as maturity. But true intelligence includes the wisdom to act when thinking no longer helps. The overthinker forgets this. They confuse delay with depth. But thinking has a point of diminishing returns. Past that point, it no longer informs action, it replaces it. Analysis becomes an escape from vulnerability, because to act, to do something unscripted, means risking the unknown. It means being seen without control. And that's terrifying to a mind trained to survive through prediction. What drives this fear isn't just anxiety, it's identity. Many people who overthink were raised in environments where mistakes were punished, or where approval depended on performance. They learned that control equals safety. As adults, that conditioning persists. The unconscious belief becomes, if I think enough, I can prevent failure. But this belief is an illusion. Control is not safety. It's stagnation disguised as responsibility. And the cost is spontaneity, the natural human impulse that allows creativity, connection, and joy to emerge. When a person lives entirely in the future tense, they begin to lose their sense of self. Every action is filtered through imagined judgment. Every word is rehearsed. Life becomes a performance where authenticity is edited out before it's ever expressed. You start to live as an actor in your own story, not the author. You respond, but you never initiate. The anxiety of the unknown makes every moment feel like a test you must prepare for. But life isn't a test, it's an improvisation. The only way to experience it is to stop scripting every line. There's a deeper irony in this. The very thing overthinkers crave, certainty, is created through action, not thought. You only learn by doing. You only find clarity by moving. Thought without motion is speculation. Motion without thought is chaos. But life requires both. The overthinker lives in imbalance, endless thought, no motion. And because of that, they never experience the feedback loop that action provides. They don't learn that failure is survivable, that spontaneity often leads to meaning, that chaos is not the same as danger. This paralysis is especially visible in relationships. The overthinker doesn't say what they feel in the moment because they were busy predicting every possible reaction. They analyze text messages, tone, and timing. They treat emotional honesty like a chess move. The result is emotional distance. Genuine intimacy requires risk, the willingness to be uncertain. But when every word is edited by fear, connection dies. Love demands spontaneity. It demands the courage to be unprepared. The death of spontaneity is not just the loss of fun, it's the loss of freedom. When you cannot act without permission from your anxiety, you are not living, you're surviving. You are a prisoner of your own predictions, locked inside the walls of your mental future. The present moment, the only place where life actually happens, becomes a blur you can't touch. You plan your happiness instead of feeling it. You prepare your authenticity instead of expressing it. You analyze life so deeply that you forget to live it. If you've ever felt this, understand that it's not a flaw, it's a symptom. It's what happens when the mind mistakes control for safety. The good news is that the moment you see this pattern, you've already stepped outside it. Awareness is the first spontaneous act you can reclaim. You can begin by noticing the next time your mind floods with what-ifs. Instead of answering them, act anyway. Speak, move, decide, not recklessly, but without over-permission. Life will not punish you for being real. It only punishes you for being absent. If you found something in this that resonates, consider liking this video, leaving your thoughts in the comments, and subscribing to The Fictionist. Here, we explore the hidden psychological mechanics behind the way we live, think, and love, and the ways to break free from the illusions that keep us trapped. The greatest casualty of overthinking isn't productivity or happiness, it's presence. The person who lives trapped in their head becomes a ghost in their own life. Their body might move through daily routines, commuting, eating, scrolling, talking, but their mind is never here. It's either stuck analyzing what went wrong yesterday or worrying about what could go wrong tomorrow. The anxious mind tries to predict, control, and prepare for every possible outcome, but in doing so, it loses touch with the only place real life ever happens, the present moment. This is the psychological death of spontaneity. When someone is caught in this pattern, they don't notice small, living details, the warmth of sunlight on their skin, the sound of laughter, or the way coffee smells in the morning. Their senses go dull because the mind is running mental simulations instead of experiencing life directly. For example, a man might sit in a restaurant with friends but spend the entire time thinking about how he is coming across, whether he said something wrong, or what others might think of his silence. He's physically there but emotionally absent, locked in a loop of internal commentary that blocks real connection. What he calls social anxiety is often the inability to stop rehearsing and simply be. Overthinking is the mind's defense mechanism against uncertainty. It's the illusion of safety created by constant analysis. The person believes that by thinking about a problem from every angle, they're taking control of it. But the truth is, they're only deepening their paralysis. Every possible choice becomes another branching path that could go wrong, so they keep delaying decisions, waiting for a perfect moment that never comes. Over time, this habit kills the natural rhythm of action and reaction. The person stops trusting their instincts. They don't say what they feel, don't act on impulse, and don't take opportunities because they've trained themselves to second-guess every move. The result is a life that feels sterile, planned, safe, but emotionally lifeless. Authentic action happens without over-calculation. When a person is fully in the present, they respond naturally, guided by intuition rather than fear. You can see this in artists, athletes, or even children. A painter doesn't analyze each brushstroke. A basketball player doesn't calculate every movement mid-game. A child doesn't plan how to laugh. They act from presence, not projection. Overthinking destroys that spontaneity because it replaces direct experience with a layer of internal commentary. The overthinker lives as if there's a narrator constantly interrupting reality with what-ifs, self-criticism, and imaginary conversations that never happened. Psychologically, this constant mental chatter burns energy. The human brain isn't built to sustain non-stop simulation. When you overthink, your nervous system behaves as if every imagined scenario is real. Your body releases stress hormones. Your heart rate changes. You become physically tired without having done anything. This is why chronic overthinkers often describe feeling mentally exhausted by the end of the day, even if they accomplished nothing tangible. They've been living in 10 different realities in their head, while their real life remains on pause. This exhaustion leads to emotional numbness. When the mind is flooded with constant thinking, it shuts down emotional processing to conserve energy. People start to describe feeling detached, like they're watching life through a screen. They lose the ability to feel excitement, joy, or connection because their awareness is trapped in the noise of constant evaluation. Relationships suffer because they can be present with others without analyzing how they are being perceived. Even simple pleasures, music, nature, touch, lose their power when the person is mentally elsewhere. Take, for instance, a woman who spends hours replaying a conversation with her boss. She imagines what she should have said differently, predicts how he might react next time, and rewrites every sentence in her head. The next day, when she actually meets him, she is not engaged in the real exchange. She is scanning his face for confirmation of her fears. Her anxiety isn't about him anymore. It's about the internal movie running in her mind. The here and now moment is gone, replaced by projection and defense. This is how overthinking quietly erases authenticity. The person lives in their mental version of the world, not the actual one. The irony is that the more someone overthinks, the less effective their thinking becomes. Overanalysis doesn't create clarity, it distorts perception. Because anxious thought is driven by fear, the mind amplifies what could go wrong while ignoring what's going right. The overthinker sees threats everywhere: social rejection, failure, embarrassment, and begins to avoid situations where these might occur. What started as mental control becomes behavioral avoidance. This avoidance reinforces anxiety, trapping the person in a cycle where the less they act, the more they think, and the more they think, the less they live. Real spontaneity comes from trust, the ability to let go of control and respond naturally. But overthinkers don't trust life, and they don't trust themselves. They believe that if they ever stopped analyzing, everything would collapse. That's why even joyful moments feel heavy. When a friend invites them out, they don't think, "This could be fun." They think, "What if it's awkward? What if I say something stupid? What if I'm tired tomorrow?" By the time they make a decision, the moment has passed. Life doesn't wait for the overthinker to feel ready. It keeps moving, and they keep watching from the sidelines. Over time, this loss of presence becomes an existential problem. The person realizes they're aging, but not really living. They have memories of events, but not memories of genuine experience, because they were never fully there when those moments happened. The wedding, the trip, the conversation, the kiss, all filtered through a fog of analysis. The tragedy of overthinking is not failure, it's absence. You cannot live deeply while living mentally elsewhere. Regaining the here and now requires surrender, not more control. It's the practice of allowing life to unfold without trying to preempt every outcome. Psychologically, this means learning to tolerate uncertainty, to accept that not everything can be predicted or perfected. For someone used to controlling everything through thought, this feels terrifying at first. But this surrender isn't weakness, it's strength. It's what allows authentic emotion, creativity, and connection to return. Think about a time you were truly immersed, maybe playing music, laughing with someone, or watching a sunset. In those moments, your mind wasn't busy judging or planning. You were simply there. That's what living in the present feels like: raw, unscripted, real. Overthinking replaces that rawness with analysis and drains life of its spontaneity. When people say they feel disconnected, it's often because they've replaced being with thinking about being. And this is what the modern world feeds: constant stimulation, endless analysis, algorithmic distraction. We scroll instead of feel, plan instead of act, and think instead of live. But the cost of this is immense. When the mind never stops running, life stops being lived in real time. To overthink is to delay living. To be present is to return home to your own life. If this breakdown helped you understand how anxiety and overthinking quietly kill authenticity and presence, then take a moment to stay connected with the Fictionist. Like, comment, and subscribe to explore more deep dives into the unseen psychology behind modern behavior and emotion, where every story uncovers the truth about why we live the way we do.